A little bit about QGIve for those on this call who might not be familiar. We are a software provider to over 6,000 nonprofits throughout the United States and Canada. Our suite of features include event and auction management, donation forms, peer-to-peer fundraising, and text fundraising. So we are really excited to support you in all of your fundraising efforts. And we're also really excited to offer amazing webinars like this one today. So definitely tune in for more. We have a bunch of resources on our website, and I definitely encourage you to check that out for additional educational resources. Finally, I am so excited to introduce Mallory to all of you. She is today's webinar presenter. Mallory is a coach, consultant, and host of an amazing podcast called What the Fundraising. And we are so excited to have Mallory with us today and for her to share her amazing fundraising expertise. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mallory and she can dive into today's content.
Amazing. Thank you, Wendy. We're going to do a quick little tech shift so that I can share my slides with all of you. But thank you so much for that warm introduction. It's so lovely to be with all of you guys today. And I'm so excited to dive into this content because one of the top questions that I'm getting right now is what should we be doing about our events for this year? And so I think we're just at the perfect time of year to be talking about how to build a signature event, how to revamp your event, and really think about nonprofit events differently. So let me just get this situated, and then I'm going to dive right in. And we're going to start actually with a little party trick. And if you have been on one of my webinars before and you've seen me do this, please do not ruin it for everybody else. But it really helps us kind of break the ice and start talking about some of these concepts in a different way. So I just want to start by showing you this image, and maybe you can tell me in the chat what you see. And again, if you have done this before, please don't tell everyone right away. But if you haven't done this before, I'm curious what you see when you look at this. When I saw it for the first time, I just saw a bunch of black and white blobs. And someone saying islands, very cool. Yesterday, I did this for a small group of folks, and they had some really interesting ideas around seeing a bear and flowers. Someone said flowers. So, but many of you might just be seeing a bunch of black and white blobs. And that's because you are experiencing something called experiential blindness. Experiential blindness is the inability to perceive what you don't already have a concept for. So let me cure you of some experiential blindness for a moment. It's a snake, right? But let me show you the best part. Who here, ew, Beth, my 3-year-old's like, that's the best part of your presentation. But other people, ew, I get it. But here's the best part. So I showed you the snake. Who here can still see the snake? Can you tell me in the chat if you can see it? Me, Elizabeth, can still see it. Yep. Yep. Most people are saying yep, but a few people are saying nope. Maybe I didn't leave the snake up a lot. So, okay, so why is this happening? And what on earth does it have to do with nonprofit events? The short answer for why you can still see the snake is that we don't actually experience the world directly. We experience our mental simulation of it. And so without a concept or a context for something, we can't incorporate it into our simulation of the world. But once we have context or a belief, our brain starts to predict that concept everywhere. So our brain is this incredibly powerful tool in terms of the way that it helps us quickly process things. But what it also means is that it has these programmed shortcuts that are rooted in prediction and not necessarily reality. And so when we let the prediction drive our decision-making of how we show up as fundraisers or how we plan that event, we can't actually fundamentally see different results, because without realizing it, we are creating our world to verify our thoughts and beliefs. And this has huge implications for our event planning, because let me show you this concept in a different way. What can you see in front of you right now? A bunch of boxes. At one point, I knew how many boxes these were. And I think there's something like file folders. Okay, file folders. That's definitely what they are. So let's say there's like 75 file folders here. You might say that's like, let's say it's not file folders. Let's say it's just boxes. And I told you that actually these boxes represent parking tickets. You'd look at this number and you would be like, oh my God, Mallory, I am never getting in your car, right? But what if I told you that these boxes represented the number of days before you had to put on your signature event? All of a sudden, this slide, this number of boxes looks a heck of a lot smaller, huh? This is the thing. Our body and our brain are constantly interpreting the data around it by the context that we give it. And this is really important if we're going to shift the way we think about how to build and create a powerful signature event for your organization. So if you have not met me before, it is so nice to meet you. My name is Mallory Erickson. Wendy gave me that really generous introduction. I'm the host of the podcast, What the Fundraising, creator of the Power Partners Formula, and I'm an executive coach trained in habit and behavior design and design thinking. And like so many of you, I became an accidental fundraiser. And you can tell me in the chat if you are an accidental fundraiser too. I started to get promoted up through nonprofit, first into a managing director role, and then an executive director role, and they came with big fundraising responsibilities. And the reality is that I hated fundraising. And I share this photo a lot, but this was sort of the epitome of my experience as an executive director. I was building up my nonprofit. I was putting on this appearance everywhere, like I had it all together. But the reality was that my nonprofit was a constant hustle. I didn't have a donor pipeline that I trusted. I was working 12 to 15-hour days sometimes. I was sacrificing my relationship with my family, my friends, and I ended up actually developing chronic pain in my neck and back because of all of it. And I was miserable. I felt really alone. And I remember sitting at my desk one day, clicking refresh on my email, just waiting for one donor to respond to all of my outreach emails, when I had this moment where I was like, you know what, a year from now, I cannot be doing this anymore. I either need to be running an organization with a donor pipeline that I trust with sustainable revenue, or I think I need to leave the nonprofit sector. And I really didn't want to leave the nonprofit sector. So I ended up going down this research rabbit hole. That's where I got executive coach certified. I got trained in habit and behavior design, design thinking. I started to study all of these different fundraising strategies that you could think of and iterating on the old school way of doing things. And the integration of those different frameworks were what came together to drastically impact the way that I fundraise. Not only did I move an organization from $1 million to 3.8 million pretty quickly, but more importantly, I started to feel fundamentally different about fundraising. I started to love fundraising. And if I can love fundraising, anyone can love fundraising. So that's all of the methodology behind the Power Partners method, the Power Partners formula, and everything that I'm going to be going over with you for today is inspired and from that course. Okay. So today, it's a little bit about me, and I'd love to hear in the chat. I know it's cold where some of you are, maybe you're still warming up your fingers, but I have a feeling that so many people here have similar experiences to the ones that I had in the nonprofit sector. So I would love to hear about them if you want to share pieces of you inside the chat too. Today, we are talking about 5 science-backed strategies to raise more from your events and maximize your impact. So are you guys ready? I need to make sure you're still there, because we left off with file folders. Are you ready to dive in to this content? Can you just give me so ready, Genevieve? Thank you. I love the energy. Sherry. Okay, we're here. We're going. Okay, it's only 9 a.m. in California, so I need your energy, you guys. Let's go. All right. All right, I'm going. So number 1, and this is the core of so much of the work that I do, and I'm gonna explain why in a second. I started you guys off with that experiential blindness activity because the assumptions that we hold about events and what our events have to look like and how they have to work and how they've been done in the past can sometimes be the number one thing that's holding us back from actually being creative and actually finding that signature event that's really going to move the needle for our organization. And so there are two pieces to this. One is that I want you to tap in for a second to how you feel about fundraising events in general. Like, how do fundraising events make you feel? Like when you think about putting on an event for your nonprofit, are you feeling a little like resistance in your belly? Are you like, oh, I don't want to have to do it again? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Like, holy moly, stressful? Thank you. Anxiety, give me panic. Okay, you guys, hey, can I just say stage fright, overwhelm, a lot of work? You guys, can I just tell you, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of you are probably coming here today feeling anxious or stressed or worried. And I just want to give you some, praise for coming to a webinar about event planning when you're feeling overwhelmed and really investing in figuring out a new way to do things. It's hard to take that chance and take the time to be here when you're feeling a lot of resistance around something. So good job, because this is definitely the first step in shifting your relationship to thinking about events. Okay. So having that awareness is really important, because at the root of all of my work, my coaching work, is this concept, the core of coaching, which is that our thoughts and our beliefs inform how we feel, and then ultimately how we show up. And that's what directly impacts our results. Okay. Our thoughts and our beliefs impact how we feel and ultimately how we show up. So if you're feeling anxiety or overwhelm, that feeling is tied to a thought or belief that you're holding about the event planning. Maybe that thought or belief is, I don't think there's a way for this event to raise the money we ultimately need it to raise. Or maybe the thought is, I don't feel like I have the support from my board in order to be able to put on this event the way that I want to. But there are thoughts and beliefs underneath those emotions, and those are the things that are ultimately impacting the actions that you're taking around the event. And this is a really important concept to understand, because we actually have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for to shift our thoughts and beliefs about different things. And if you're kind of struggling with this concept, let me give you a non-fundraising example to help clarify this point. So a few years ago, I was speaking in front of a group of students and parents about test anxiety. And I said to the room, I said, chemistry is not stressful. And everyone kind of looked at me sideways. And I said, no, chemistry is just chemistry. What's stressful are the thoughts and the beliefs that we hold about chemistry. I'm bad at science, so I'm going to be bad at chemistry. I did poorly on the last test, so I'm going to do poorly on this test. The teacher likes so-and-so so much more than me. I can never seem to figure this out. Those thoughts and those beliefs, that's what actually makes it stressful, not chemistry itself. And I hate to say it, don't throw tomatoes at me, but the same thing is true about fundraising events. Putting on fundraising events are just putting on fundraising events. What makes them so stressful are the thoughts and the beliefs that we hold about fundraising events. And then unknowingly, those thoughts and beliefs become this overwhelm and anxiety and stress that impacts the way that we show up and impacts our entire experience. So having awareness around this, bringing some awareness around this, is tremendous in helping you be able to design an event that's both going to be effective and is going to keep you in action and excitement in your planning. Okay. And so, oh, yes. Well, Rebecca, you are not alone there. I would say that asking people for money gives most people anxiety. But again, that is still related to a thought and a belief that we hold about fundraising. And actually, that was one of the core things when I first started to understand the cognitive behavior loop in my life as a fundraiser. One of the first things I realized is that, okay, I want to throw up before every major donor meeting, and I feel so uncomfortable asking for money. And so I started to ask myself, okay, well, what are the thoughts and the beliefs behind that discomfort? Where is that coming from? And it came from this set of beliefs that, asking people for money is asking people to do something that they don't really want to do, but you are kind of trying to guilt them or get them to do you this favor because, they have money and you don't have money. And obviously, if that's our set of beliefs around fundraising, it's going to be uncomfortable asking for money. But when I really started to examine, what do I really believe that giving is about? What do I really, at the end of the day, what do I really believe that fundraising is about? And what it turned into is now the mantra behind Power Partners, which is that great fundraising is not an ask, it's an offer. It's an invitation. If I asked you right now, how many of you invite the same friends to your birthday party year after year? Probably a lot of you would say, me, of course. Yes, I invite them year after year. But then all of a sudden we're planning a fundraising event and we say, oh, but we invited them last year. Are they going to want to come again? It's just built in our mental models around what fundraising is. And so starting to bring awareness to this as we move into these 4 other strategies is really important. Okay, there's so much content I want to give you guys today. So I'm going to pay attention to my slides. I love that you're talking in the chat. I hope you're talking to each other too. And if there are questions coming up in there, I promise to get to them at the end. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Woo. Okay. Strategy number 2, understand your organization and event assets. So inside Power Partners, we do something called asset mapping, which is this process of understanding all of the different things of value that your organization has way beyond your program and way beyond, the things we typically think of when we think of what's valuable in terms of our nonprofit. So way beyond our programs and our services, your organization has so many assets, and your events, different types of events, have so many assets too. So what are assets? Assets are all the different things of value inside your organization. So that could be everything from marketing opportunities to volunteer opportunities, maybe your following or traffic on your website, your board and engagement, perhaps some thought leadership. You have board members who are big thought leaders in certain areas. Maybe you have great impact data. The reality is that assets can look all sorts of different ways, but they are the things that people care about, and different people care about different assets. And we'll talk about that in the next strategy. But the thing you want to understand is that your organization has so many assets, and you want to start by brainstorming out these assets, because that's going to help you identify which assets can be leveraged for your event. And I would think about this in 2 categories. I would brainstorm a list of your organization assets, and then I would brainstorm a list of possible event assets. So possible event assets are things like tables, themed tables that are named after different different sponsors, for example. So not just our normal table tent, but maybe you create like a really fun naming opportunity at different tables. Another asset would be to have some logo recognition in your program, depending on what type of event you're having. Maybe one of your assets would be that your sponsors or your donors really want to be able to meet the beneficiaries of your program are people who got scholarships to something. So the way you're going to organize your event is to be able to help people be able to meet and hear what people learned when they were in this academic program that they got a scholarship to, right? Because that asset is the incredible storytelling, and perhaps you're in an organization where it feels good for beneficiaries and donors to come together in a real ethical and community-based way, right? So all of these are different depending on the assets of your organization. Maybe they're skills related to your staff. So maybe you have a dog shelter program, and you have all these staff who have dog training skills. And so you want your event to actually be a huge dog show where you train the dogs, and all of your donors, all of your community members can be there, bring their dogs ahead of time. You do some big group training program, and then there's this really fun dog show element. I don't know dogs, so I might be giving a totally unrealistic opportunity, but I'm trying to just give you an example of how you can be creative around the assets, the things that make your organization special, and design your event around those assets. Okay, so now I'm going to go into this next part, and I'll make sure if you are like, okay, I'm not sure if this thing is an asset that I'm thinking of right now, I'm starting to brainstorm this out in my head a little bit. Write it down, write your question down, or throw it in the Q&A right now. I'm happy to answer specific questions about this at the end of this webinar, or give you feedback on specific assets as well. But for the purposes of this webinar, I want to talk you through the process of designing this event, so that whether you need to do this yourself, one-on-one, you're going to do it with your board, or you're going to do it with your team, you can go through this process all together. You can brainstorm those assets together. So once you have an idea for the different types of assets that you have, you want to recognize that different types of assets are valuable to different types of constituents. So one of the mistakes I see a lot of nonprofits make is that they think they use the same type of assets for different types of funders. So table naming, for example, let's just pick something super generic, right? That might be an asset that's valuable to some of your corporate sponsors because you have a lot of local companies who get involved and want to, have their name showcased at the event in different ways. But you don't necessarily know that that table sponsor naming is valuable to families who buy a table or a local family foundation, right? So we don't just want to repurpose assets for everyone. We want to tailor them really specifically to the type of funder and their interest area when it comes to your organization. So I'm going to give you a quick activity to help you arrive at this for your organization. So I mentioned a little bit before that one of the things that I think we've been getting wrong about rejuvenating our events since the pandemic is we're trying to rinse and repeat things that we did before, and we're focusing way too much on the logistics of the event. Okay, we're going to have an event with a cocktail hour, and then after that we're going to have speakers, and then we're going to do this thing. We're in total logistics planning mode. And first of all, I completely understand why we go right there. One reason might be that you did that event for so many years before the pandemic, and so you're just trying to get some of that magic back. That's one reason why we do it. The other reason we do it is because we feel overwhelmed. And so we feel like if we start to figure out the logistics, we'll feel less overwhelmed. But oftentimes what this has us doing is planning events that are actually disconnected from what our donors, what our community members, what our sponsors really want. And so the way to tap into this is to actually start with the experience, what we want people to feel, what we want people to experience when they are a part of your event. So I'm going to give you this process, this thinking process, and you can grab this. And I want you to ultimately do this with all the different types of funders you want to engage in your event, but I'm just going to show you the process right now. So individual, you can brainstorm this individually. If some people want to throw this into the chat, I'd be super curious what you come up with, but I want you to answer this question. People contribute to my organization because. People contribute to my organization because, and I'll give you the second question as you're starting to think about this. Whoops. I want blank. So I want you to think about one constituent segment, right? I mentioned I want you to use this with all of them, but for right now, I want you to pick one. So I want major donors to feel blank when they come to this event. I want corporate sponsors to feel blank when they come to this event. I want our community members to feel blank when they come to this event. So I really want you to start with the experiential side of things. Okay, for those of you, I'm going to push you guys a little bit here, okay? For those of you who are answering question number 1, saying that they believe in the mission or they believe the cause matters, I want you to get more specific. I want you to get more specific. I want you to think about why do they contribute to your specific organization? Your mission is probably similar to other organizations. The cause area that you work in is probably similar to other organizations, but they contribute to you. Why? People contribute to my organization because we communicate about the impact of their donation, even if they give $25, or people contribute to my organization because they believe we uniquely move the needle around X in order to Y. People contribute to my organization because we make them feel like they are part of a community making X impact together. I want you to get really specific, because If you start with more of that general, they care about the mission, that's going to make it really hard from an event standpoint for you to design an experience that's really tailored to that, right? It's going to feel like, well, anything is about the mission, right? If we go and we have somebody talk about the mission, then we're achieving that goal of sharing the mission. But you're trying to create a really special event, and you're trying to create an experience that engages people more deeply. So in order to do that, you need to get more detailed with these answers. I want our corporate sponsors to feel that their investment in our organization gives their company a community of activists working towards blank, because I know their company also deeply cares about X. Okay, so I think you guys can see how I'm doing this, right? I want you to use this, and you're going to use this afterwards. I love how many people are throwing stuff in the chat. I love this. But I want you to really think about this. You know, I had a call. I'm gonna take a sip of water really quick. I had a really interesting call, a group coaching call with Power Partners folks the other day. And someone asked a really great question about assets and about this kind of concept. And they said, you know, the asset thing makes me a little nervous because it makes me feel like in comparison mode, right? I only serve this many people a year when Charity Water serves this many people a year, or I only have this many followers when this organization has this many followers. The idea behind assets and the idea behind core value alignment is that you are picking the things that are unique to you, that are unique and special to your organization. So it's not about picking assets that are valuable to other organizations. It's about, I said, okay, so you don't serve as many people as Charity Water a year, but what I hear you saying is that you go so much deeper in every community that you work with. So that's the asset. Maybe the asset isn't how many wells you drill. Maybe the asset is how many hours of programming a year you do in community. So think about this. This is why specificity is so important when you're asking these questions too, because that's going to allow you to design around what makes your organization specifically unique. Okay. I hope that's helpful. Okay. Yes. Okay, James, I want them to feel proud to be a part. Hold on, I want them to feel proud to be a part of the programs and success of our clients. So I don't know what type of organization you're in. I don't know if this would be appropriate for you, but I would think really creatively about what can help them feel personal pride around being a part of it. Would it be that your clients, every client gets to sit at a different table at your event and just build relationships, not that they're put on display in any sort of way, but just build relationships with the folks at the tables? Do you want, when people walk into your event, there to be a huge photo collage wall that includes both the services and the programs and your volunteers, and then has highlights of certain corporate sponsors or donors who have made things possible? What makes people feel pride? What makes people feel belonging and a part of something? You want to think about how can you design for that emotional experience, right? Because here's the thing. What people want, what your donors want when they come to this event, what any individual wants, is to see a connection to their personal identity, a sense of belonging to the right group, right? They want to feel like they belong there, like they were really supposed to come to that event. Belief that their involvement matters, right? So something that often can sort of kill that is when only donors who give above a certain threshold are recognized in certain ways or treated a certain way. But then that person who's been giving you $100 a year for 10 years, how do they know how much they matter when they show up to that event? And then they want positive memories with the organization. And this is where I think events are really special. Events have the ability. So when we give a donation online, serotonin is released in our brain, a feel-good hormone. But serotonin actually doesn't cement memory. We get that jolt for a moment. But what cements memory is dopamine. And events have this incredible potential to create dopamine, multi-sensory experiences where we build positive memory with the organization. And so that's why also events can go so much farther beyond the money that you're raising in that exact moment, because they are a relationship building opportunity, a memory building opportunity for the organization. Whoops. Oh, I didn't know my mouse could do that. At the core of all of this is that I love this quote from Seth Godin, because for me, this like wraps up this whole idea, which is that people like us do things like this. People like us do things like this. When people walk into your event, they want to feel like, yeah, people like me are here. People like me give to an organization like this. People like me make blank possible. People like me show up for my community by doing blank. So you want to think about, how is your event constantly reminding the participants in the room, the different segments of people in the room, companies like mine support organizations like this. Companies like mine believe that when X happens, X is better. These are the types of ways to think about the experience people are having at your event. Okay. Last thing I'm going to say on this one, because I know we have to move on, is that as you start to identify the assets related to your different event elements, right? So your assets could be maybe a speaking spot at the event. Your assets could be logo recognition on something. Your assets could be storytelling opportunities, right? All these different things. We talked about that. Then you want to think about the different segments of people who are showing up to your event and which assets they are particularly aligned with or excited about. And if you don't know, ask them. Survey your donors, survey your community members, ask your folks, hey, what would be more exciting for you if your table had blank or blank? What would you love to see more? An example of X or Y. If you don't know, ask them. If you're creating, when I have my folks do sponsorship benefits for events, I have them do a rough sponsorship outline. I do not have them do a perfectly beautiful deck that they're sending out with solidified sponsorship levels. I have them do a rough deck, and I have them get on the call, and I have them say, hey, I want your feedback. This is my first draft at thinking about the sponsorship benefits for our event. I would really love your feedback. Is there anything you're not seeing on this list that you are really hoping to see? What are some of your goals this year, and how do they relate to some of the different benefits you're seeing here? This is rough, and I would love to co-create this so that your involvement in this event really feels like a win-win, really feels beneficial to your business. I want you to see that you're a part of this. Right? That's how you move an event sponsor from being some random $2,500 sponsor to being a $25,000 event sponsor, is that you build those levels, those tiers, those benefits in conversation with them. We think we need the perfect Canva designed pitch deck. What we actually need is connection and collaboration and conversation. That's how you create buy-in. That's how you create relationships. And that's how you create people who want to be deeply involved in your organization. Okay, number 4. I'm getting riled up, but I want to make sure we have lots of time for questions. So one of the things that I know is so hard, and I remember this so well, as a nonprofit executive director, is that you are basically planning these events. And this goes whether you're an executive director or whatever role you have in your nonprofit. My guess is you're trying to plan these events in between like 4,500 other things to do. So you are doing X, Y, and Z related to this, and then you're trying to do this in your little 15-minute break before you have to run into this other thing. Is that feeling true for people, that you're trying to fit this event planning into these tiny little buckets of time throughout your day? Maybe you have an hour here. Yes, James. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. There's a way to optimize your time. First of all, I want you to recognize that your event is going to be, it can only be as successful as how it's prioritized in your organization. So if the event is always going to be this like afterthought, this thing that you're doing on the side, then what I would honestly do is take a step back and say, okay, if we really can only give this amount of hours to planning this event, then what are some realistic expectations for it? And how do we want to design an experience that feels really meaningful, that builds our relationships with donors, that cements memory, that does all these things, but also recognize that we're not gonna design an event that raises $1 million in 40 hours. Like, most people are not going to be able to do that. So one thing is to just be honest about the amount of time that you're allocating to this event, and then what the design and expectations can be for that amount of time. But another way to optimize your time, and this is strategy we use in Power Partners too, is to bucket your time by the type of activity that you're doing and the person that you're outreaching to. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. So most event planning feels scattered. It's 100% how I felt when I was planning my events. And that's because when we're doing event planning, we're spending way too much time context switching between all the different event elements, okay? So we block time on our calendar maybe to work on the event, or we have a meeting where we're gonna work on the event, but inside that time, we're spending 10 minutes on tickets and 30 minutes on sponsorships and 4 minutes on major donor conversations, and we're still context switching within our time bucket that's about events. So inside Power Partners, we do something called 5 and dive, which is that you can only prospect 5 funders at a time and then outreach to them. So here's how I would apply this to your event planning. Number one, if you have a meeting about your event with other people on your team, I would focus on one topic for that event, like one area of focus, one type of funder, one interest area that the funder has. And if you can, focus on one set of assets. So you have an hour meeting where you're just going to focus on corporate sponsorship related to like X area of the event. And you're going to specifically think about how you're leveraging X, Y, and Z assets. And then in that meeting, move through the whole process, right? So think about the levels, prospect the list of people, create the outreach email template. And then if you have time in that meeting, start sending a few emails, customize a few emails, right? You want to bucket your time and find tasks that can be completed in that amount of time. Okay, and you want to focus your brain on one type of funder at a time, one interest area at a time, and one group of assets. Because if you're trying to activate empathy, right? Empathy is our ability to imagine what would help a corporate sponsor feel connected to our organization, or help an individual feel more connected to our organization. You can't just switch empathy between different types of people that easily. Otherwise, you're going to confuse them for each other, and you're going to switch your assets around, right? So you want to really like put your head and your heart and your body in the mind of your corporate partners and really complete the activity related to them, and then have a separate bucket of time where you're focusing on a different element of the program, okay? And these don't have to be huge buckets of time. They can even just be an hour, but just making sure that you're not bucketing your time by event planning, because that still involves a ton of context switching, okay? Okay, the 5th one, and then we'll get questions. Sorry. That's how you always know I'm live. I need lots of water. Okay. So the 5th one here is build know, like, trust through transparency and integrity. So you guys, my mind is getting blown a little bit around this concept right now. So I feel like when I was being trained on how to fundraise and how to lead a nonprofit, there was so much drilled into my head around like needing the perfect impact report and needing the perfect pitch deck and needing to, you build trust by really demonstrating that you have it all together. The reality is, we know from the science that trust is actually built through transparency, through honesty. And we saw this in droves at the beginning of COVID, right? We watched all these organizations flip on a cell phone camera or computer camera and speak honestly from the heart about what was going on, not in some curated or perfectionist way. And what did we see? We watched donors and community members step up in big and unexpected ways. We watched a tremendous amount of money move quickly. And that's because we were building know, like, trust. I just interviewed this amazing, amazing researcher, Carol Robin, on What the Fundraising. The episode's going to come out in a few weeks. And she wrote this book on connection and relationship building. She said one of the things that makes us feel connected to people, one of the things that actually helps us build strong relationships, is to feel like we are being truly known and that we truly know the other person. That we truly know the other person. We talk a lot about donor trust in terms of them trusting us. How do we get them to trust us more? But we don't talk a lot about how do we trust them too? How do we let ourselves be fully known? How do we let ourselves be more honest about what the challenges are here and opportunities, and be able to speak from a place of confidence around the fact that we don't have it all figured out? Because guess what? If you had it all figured out, your nonprofit wouldn't be as necessary as it is. Solving the problems that your organization are solving, these are big, big problems. They are not going to be solved by the end of the year. They are not going to be solved by this event. So we need to get honest about the journey that we're on with our donors together. We need to be transparent operationally about what it looks like to walk together towards realizing our mission. And that comes with transparency. The other piece of this is that when we are not being transparent, when we are in our perfectionist selves, it does not feel good to us. It feels cringy to us as fundraisers. And I remember when I first started this work, I remember so many fundraisers saying to me, I feel like a car salesperson when I'm fundraising. And so I started to really think about the fact, I was like, why do car salespeople make us so uncomfortable? I was like, oh, they make us uncomfortable because a car salesperson just wants to sell us the car, whether or not it's the right car for us. That's why we go into the car shop trying to make sure that we have done all the research in advance, because we feel like they just want to sell us a car, whether or not it's the right car for us. And we are taught to do this a lot in nonprofit too, to try to figure out the angle to engage that person. They can feel that energy. So we have to go into these relationships. We need to be sharing real stories. We need to be showing up as real people, sharing our vulnerability, respecting the relationship, and sharing challenges and mistakes. And this goes for both in all your lead up to the event planning, in your corporate sponsorship conversations, in your major donor conversations, in your engagement of your committee conversations. And it also goes for how you should be talking about your organization at the event. It does not need to be this performance of how everything worked perfectly over the last year. In fact, when we do that, people trust us less. They trust us less because they're like, what don't I see here? What aren't they telling me? There's a ton of research that demonstrates that when we are more honest about the challenges and the mistakes that we face, people are so much more trusting of us. And there's a lot of research in the startup world around how fundraising directly correlates with the sharing of challenges and even massive failures. Okay, I wanted to make sure we have plenty of time for questions because I know I went through a lot. So I'm gonna give you a quick recap. The first piece of this, designing your signature event, this is the process to designing this event, bringing awareness to the cognitive behavior loop and how it relates to event planning and fundraising. Identifying your organization and event assets, focusing on alignment and differentiating those assets by funder type, optimizing your time to build momentum. And the other thing about momentum is that it helps us overcome fear. Okay. So when we start to build momentum around creating that rough sponsorship thing, we have that momentum, helps us click send on those emails a little bit better. But when we're scattered and bouncing from thing to thing, our fear, our overwhelm can actually get in the way of us taking the most effective actions. And then build deeper relationships before the event, at the event, after the event, through transparency and deep integrity of the work that you're doing. If you liked meeting me today, if we hadn't met before and you're not already a part of it, I have a free community. It's the whatthefundraisingcommunity.com. You're welcome to come inside. We have like almost 600 amazing fundraisers. We just launched this and nonprofit leaders inside helping each other out, sharing resources. I post all the different places I am and ways to work with me. So I'll put that in the chat too for folks who are interested. Thank you so much for having me for this. Let's move into questions, and then I'll give another little sort of thank you and wrap up at the end.
Awesome. Mallory, thank you so much. That was so much fun to participate in. I want to thank all of our participants too for the awesome chat engagement. That was really, really a blast. So We do have a question in the Q&A right now. I would love for everyone else, if you have any questions, definitely drop them in there. We will get to them, but we'll start with Stephanie's question. So Stephanie is asking, I'm excited for this question. We are hosting our first health and wellness symposium, and we will be announcing the kickoff of our program. Could this be an asset?
Yes, yes. And so, yes. And so a great way to leverage this is to like tease this a little bit before, right? So you can say like, you know, we have a really special announcement that we can't wait to release at this event. And then even at the event itself, you can leverage that asset by like on the program, putting like secret announcement, right? So think about all the different ways you can build excitement and delight around the asset that you have, but absolutely announcing the kickoff to a program. Absolutely. And if you've had some funders who have come in to help you start that program, another asset could be an opportunity to showcase that relationship as well. So yes, I love that, Wendy.
That's a great idea. That would be really fun to participate in. All right, Joe has a question for us. So how should the event venue fit a diverse audience?
Ooh, that's a good question because I don't necessarily know what you mean by diverse, but what I would recommend is that I would think about in whatever diversity you mean in terms of that, because some people that means like accessibility, for example, right? And so they need someone signing during the event, or they need other types of sort of accessibility. So what I would think about is I would group kind of the groups of constituents of people that you plan to invite and want to have at this event. And then I would think about what is each group's need? What do you want each group to experience being a part of that event? And then what are different elements to account for and prioritize their experience at that event? Without knowing more details, that's a more like general way of explaining it. And then I would try to find a venue that could accommodate for that. So if you need certain types of accommodation based on like physical space or access or the amount of space, right? There's lots of different ways to think about the space that really depends on what we mean by that diverse audience.
Totally. Abdullah has a question for us. So many of our community members are hesitant to RSVP and choose to purchase tickets at the door. I know that can be very frustrating. Do you have any recommendations to help curb this habit?
Okay. Whew. Okay. So this is such a good question. Let me think about this for a second. One way that you could do this. So anytime we take an action, if you've come to any of my habit design sessions before, you've heard me talk about this. I've studied under Dr. BJ Fogg. So in order for any action to take place, 3 things need to come together at the same time: enough motivation, the ability to do the thing, and a prompt to do the thing. So what happens with ticket sales that are only happening at the door and not in advance, what that tells me is that the person has the ability to buy the ticket in advance. You are prompting them in your email to buy the ticket in advance, but they're not getting over the action line, which means they do not have enough motivation to get over the action line. And a donor is not motivated by your need to know in advance how many people are coming. I know we wish they were, but it is just not how human design works. And so what I would think about are what are ways to motivate them based on their interests to help with more advanced ticket sales. So you could do something like a bonus if they buy their tickets by a certain date. That's why people do ticket pricing tiers, right? This price, but again, that only motivates the people who want to buy it at a cheaper price. If tons of people are buying it at the door and you've already tried that, that means that the financial motivator is not the right motivator. Maybe you do something like, and the early bird gets the worm. Everyone who signs up by a certain date gets to come to a special VIP event 30 minutes before the actual event starts. So again, this should be designed around what your group of donors want. Maybe they get access to a free training put on by someone inside your organization. So think about how you can leverage one of your other assets to create a time box moment earlier in the timeline for ticket sales. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, anytime you can have those perks, right? To get away from those last minute folks is definitely awesome. And I love the idea of like this special, whatever it may be, cocktail hour or something like that. Rebecca had a great point too. So she says we raise prices at the door, but also reserve the right to be sold out. So sometimes it is what it is. We've got a good question here from Elizabeth. She says, you mentioned donors wanting to feel connection, sense of belonging, belief their involvement matters. Can you give some examples of what that looks like?
Yes. Okay. So, all right, let me think about this for a second, how the best way to do this. So I'm going to say this, and I want everybody to take this with a grain of salt, because all of you have different capacities around the customization that you can do with your event. But for example, anything that has someone's name on it adds a sense of belonging, like they were meant to be there, right? So if they have a name tag that has been pre-printed for them, or they have a program with their name at the top with one line from the executive director, or they have a table card that tells them exactly where they're going to sit, or their photo is on that wall that I made up and mentioned, right? All of those things signal to them that they belong there, that they were meant to be there, right? And it gives the feeling even of like, if they hadn't come, their seat would have been empty, that table card wouldn't have been picked up, and so it gives them that sense that they were really meant to be there. Connection, how we feel connected to people, again, that happens by people feeling like they are known, that we are being truly known to them, right? So they feel connected to us when we share our most human experiences with them. That's what helps people feel connected, and they feel like they can bring their real self when we bring our real selves. So like we demonstrate connection by sort of having that openness, sharing that way. Another thing that really helps people feel connected is when we share our feelings. So when I was fundraising with donors, before I would make the ask, I would say something like, this next part is what makes me the most nervous inside, but it's also the most sacred part of my work. And so I want to talk about how your investment, what you're thinking in terms of your investment for this year. And so when we share, like, I'm nervous about this, or this makes me uneasy, or I don't know if I'm misinterpreting what you're saying here, and I'm nervous to ask you this, but I also don't want to miss a cue that you're sending me. All of those things, those help build connection and trust with people. And then belief that their involvement matters. So that's about sharing impact. And so I know it can be really hard to say, like, your $25 bought this exact thing, but we can do things like, last year at this time, 340 of you giving amounts between $10 and $250 allowed us to do X. Right. And that tells them like they're a part, they belong, like every piece of that, they're in that, they're included in that. So I hope that gives you, Elizabeth, some different ideas there.
That was wonderful input. I think this is so interesting. Stephanie shared, we have a personal concierge for our donors and funders. That is a great resource.
Yes.
Haneen has a question. So they're asking, can you give examples of how to recognize the smaller reoccurring donors at events and make them feel appreciated? That's a wonderful question.
Yeah, I mean, I think so again, this depends on the format of your event, but maybe you want to have like a slideshow going on one side of your event with some donor profiles. You have and you ask them in advance for their permission, but you have a picture of them and a quote from them. And it's the people who are a part of your recurring giving program, if you have that, or they're a part of your, or they just have been giving every single year. And you say we and you give it some naming, we really wanted to take this is our 10th anniversary. We really wanted to take time to highlight donors who have been with us since the very beginning. And, you know, you sort of give them some recognition there as well. Again, you could do this on like sort of a donor recognition wall at the event if you wanted to, but I love the idea of recognizing your recurring smaller gift amount donors. They are often super overlooked, and again, ask their permission to be included. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I do too. I always say reoccurring donors are your fan club. They're your number one fan. So I think it's super important to give them that love during your events. It's a great question. Stacy is asking, how can we share this amazing presentation with our team? Stacy, you will be getting an email tomorrow from QGive, and you can share this presentation as wide as you can. And we're excited to further this awesome message. All right, we look like we're all done with questions. If anyone has any final questions, please drop it in that Q&A section. I want to thank all participants for this incredible engagement that we've had today. I want to thank Mallory for your amazing energy and your expertise. It was a pleasure to have you join us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And for all of you, you know, I know how overwhelming it can be to think about doing your events this year. And so before you get into all the logistics and all the spreadsheets and all the things, spend some time with the questions that we went over today, because that's going to help you also tap into your excitement about this as well. And that's going to be the type of energy that you're going to want to bring to your planning, because remember, how you feel about something impacts the decisions that you make and the results that you ultimately see. So we want you to feel excited about the event that you're designing, because your donors, your sponsors, your community members, they're going to feel that energy transfers. So I just want to leave you with that. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the incredible work that you do. I love fundraisers, and I'm just so grateful always to get to spend time with you.
Yeah, totally echo that. Thank you so much, everyone. Mallory, thank you again. And attendees, please remember that there is a survey after this, and you can also submit this for CFRE credit. So make sure you fill out that survey. And if you're going for CFRE, make sure you put that in. We'll catch you next time in our next webinar, and keep an eye out on your inbox. Bye. I did get screenshots of your chat, so you can